Humans have left Earth and have made a paradise in space, Avalon, as humanity's new home. During this time, humanity created the Galactic Alliance of Humanity to expand throughout the galaxy. Around the same time, a monstrous threat called the Hideauze appeared before the Alliance. Until now, a war rages between humanity and Hideauze, fighting over survival in a cold, distant galaxy. Second Lieutenant Leto is fighting the war with his AI robot partner, Chamber. On their way to their last tour of duty, Leto joins the latest attack against the Hideauze, planning to finish the war once and for all. The attack ultimately ends in failure, with humanity losing and much of the fleet having no chance. As a retreat order is issued, Leto tangles into one last-ditch effort to help his squad, but he cannot return, cast out into space with nowhere else to go within the wormhole. 6 months later, the salvage ship Gargantua retrieves an unknown machine which turns out to be Chamber. The entire salvage team is unable to take it apart. Once everyone leaves, Leto investigates the space and tries to gather intel on his location. The crew of the Gargantua detects his presence, starting a long chase around the fleet. He eventually kidnaps one of the crew, Amy. The hunt leads them outside, with Leto finding out he is on a habitable planet, shocking him enough to release Amy. As the crew corners him, he summons Chamber to protect him, surprising the crew. Chamber then reveals that they are on planet Earth, the origin of humanity. Deciding to try and open a dialogue with these people, Leto stays pinned to the pylon. He asks the crew to talk, through Chamber, to their leaders and parley. During this time, the crew believes Chamber, who is translating, has another person inside. Ridget, the commander of the fleet, connects with the leaders of the fleet and tries to decide what to do. During this time, we see the beauty of the civilization within Gargantua and the trappings of survival within the fleet. During this time, Amy discusses the possibility of Leto coming from the stars with her brother, Bevel. Legend has it that humanity tried to escape the world before everything froze over. This motivates Amy to try and connect with Leto, giving him food and starting a conversation. She explains that they are currently on Earth, telling about the situation when the lands froze over. This is Earth, and when it was frozen over, some humans escaped to the stars while others stayed. Eventually, the ice melted and became a vast ocean. Stragglers of the time formed fleets to salvage old technology from below. Amy also talks about their way of life and how they live. Looking for other items of advanced technology, Ridget sends Bellows to salvage, only to find Chamber and Leto. During this time, Bellows' ship is attacked by pirates. Amy asks Leto to help them, with the latter agreeing, planning to earn everyone's trust. Leto boards Chamber and goes on to decimate all pirates, keeping Bellows' crew safe. Amy then watches in shock at the massive destructive force that efficiently eliminated most of the pirates with no harm to Bellows' ship and crew, as Amy and the others watch in shock at its destructive power. In the aftermath of the battle, Amy gets angry at Leto for killing the pirates. The leaders of the Gargantua discuss the eventual retaliation that may happen due to the rapid turn of events. Meanwhile, a survivor of Leto's attack brings information to the pirate leader Luckage about it, and she decides to launch an attack on the Gargantua. Amy brings Bellows to chat with Leto. During this time, they explain to him that weapons are a last resort in their culture. As people must rely on each other to survive, murder is frowned upon. As Amy reconciles with Leto, Luckage's large pirate fleet moves on and approaches the Gargantua. Amy asks Leto to stay, discussing with Ridget about the situation. He agrees to help them once more, in exchange for being accepted aboard the fleet. Ridget leaves instructions to defeat the enemies with no casualties. As the operation runs, Leto disables the pirate ships on the front lines. He then returns to the Gargantua to deal with a sneak attack by Luckage herself. Leto confronts Luckage and defeats her with ease, repelling the pirate attack. Upon being saluted by the crew of the Gargantua, Leto is greeted by Amy and replies with the first native words he learned: "Thank you." Despite having driven the pirates away, Leto receives an invoice for all the damages dealt to Gargantua. Ridget, however, claims that Leto would instead need to help around. While Chamber helps the other workers, Leto tries to find something to do with his time, sculpting a Hideauze claw into an ocarina. When Amy asks him about it, Leto gives it to her, who in turn gives it to her little brother. Leto asks for more information about his whereabouts. Amy brings him to Dr. Oldham, their local expert and wise man. Dr. Oldham explains to him that most of mankind's old technology is lost. There is currently no way for the Gargantua to help him return to space. He asks the same from Bevel, who reminds him that it is important to have a goal. After some time, rain starts to fall, and Hideauze starts helping collect rainwater to replenish the ship's supply. Amy takes Hideauze to meet Bevel, who asks him about his life in space and the object he was carving. Hideauze claims to not know what it really is, only for Bevel to realize it was a flute. Bevel plays it as an instrument, helping Hideauze recall a suppressed memory that made him cry. It reminds him of a younger brother shuttled off by the Alliance. He then asks Bevel to return the flute to him. It is this time when he wonders if he should learn more about their surroundings. Chamber also mentions that he needs to leave everything behind once he can return to his unit. Although Chamber claims that he must remain on standby, Hideauze decides to look for a job out of boredom. He fails to find a vacant post up to his skills, but soon after, the Gargantua stops moving for maintenance. They take advantage of the absence of winds or waves, known in the fleet as the calm day. During this time, all workers have a free day except for repairmen. Despite that, Pinion invites Hideauze and Amy to play and lounge around for a swim. As Pinion finds himself unable to cook due to an energy shortage, he sends Hideauze on an errand. Amy and her friends also go out for an errand to the top of the high tower, turning it into a race. During the race, Amy saves Hideauze from the rowdy transvestites who want to hire him. She also brings Hideauze back to the task, finally fetching a bottle of sauce. Amy then informs Hideauze that Pinion arranged the party to cheer him up, because he didn't find himself a job. As the day ends, the wind resumes and the calm ends. Eventually, Hideauze decides to work as a fisherman, who then decides to do things himself, only to discover he is unable to pilot a regular Umbro. In the end, he sends Chamber to assist the other fishermen instead. During this time, Pinion invites Hideauze for lunch, offering him a position at his crew, but Bellows appears and gives a counteroffer on the salvage team. Meanwhile, Amy and her friends dance to the crowd, mistaking a cooked octopus for a Hideauze. Others assure him that it is food, rather than an enemy. Chamber also finds himself in a fuss, asking for Hideauze's help to sort out the catch. Later that night, Amy spends time alone with Hideauze, bonding with each other and building a closer relationship. A natural ocean lighting alerts Hideauze, preparing to defend Amy. She eventually calms him down and dances for him upon his request. The next day, Hideauze goes on to do salvage work with Bellows, until an underwater creature appears, which Chamber identifies as a Hideauze. Hideauze abandons his work and prepares to attack it. Despite Bellows' pleas, Hideauze kills the whale squid, considered a sacred animal by the locals. Its death spreads rumors of misfortune about to befall the Gargantua. Hideauze has Chamber analyze a sample of it, wondering why it is not attacking humans on sight. Chamber deduces that somehow, both species learn to coexist. Pinion goes on his plan to hire Hideauze, with the intention of exploring uncharted whale squid territory. They also plan to salvage its treasures, but Bellows tries to convince them otherwise. Bellows reveals that Pinion wants to enact revenge for his older brother who was killed by the whale squids. Chamber's analysis finishes, proving that whale squids are similar to the Hideauze in genetic makeup. Hideauze is ready to kill all, but Amy and the others try to change his mind. When a massive flock of whale squids approaches the Gargantua, Commander Fairlock declares a full shutdown of the Gargantua to let the creatures pass under them. Amy tries to stop Hideauze, only for Ridget to force him to stand by. The whale squids pass under the Gargantua without any issue, but Hideauze stays indignant about Amy's disapproval. Fairlock learns about Pinion's plans, with Flange declaring his intention to accompany Pinion with his ship. Both express their intention to secede from the Gargantua. Fairlock, however, tries to convince them, only to suffer a heart attack. Fairlock does not resist it, but instead nominates Ridget as his successor before his death. Meanwhile, Chamber informs Hideauze that he pinpointed the location of their civilization in space. However, he also discovers that their current location is too far. From their calculations, it may take thousands of years until someone receives their distress signal. Fairlock's funeral commences, and several ships agree to follow Pinion. As they prepare to separate from the Gargantua, Melty decides to leave with them. Saya asks Amy if she does not want to leave with Hideauze, but she refuses to abandon her brother. Bevel tries to convince Hideauze to change his mind too, but the latter reasons out that what he does is for the protection of all from the Hideauze. Instead of attending the funeral, Ridget looks for a solution to stop the fleet from splitting apart. Regardless, Bellows reminds her that it is not her soul further. Ridget then sees Fairlock off, which then shifts to having Amy watch the breakaway fleet of ships leave the Gargantua with Hideauze aboard. Hideauze starts his offensive on the whale squid nest. Pinion's crew helps him with a barrage of depth charges. This kills off most of them without much effort. As they investigate an ancient facility, Hideauze discovers a few records and decrypts them through the process. Upon decryption, Hideauze requests access for them, only for Chamber to deny it, noting these documents are classified files by the Galactic Alliance of Humankind. Because he is the highest-ranked representative on Earth, Hideauze overrides Chamber's protocol, letting him access the files. These records show the slow progress of the Fifth Ice Age on Earth. During this time, the human civilization tries to colonize other worlds. A large organization of researchers known as the Evolvers garners heavy backlash due to their unethical movements around the world. As global cooling advances, interstellar travel became a high priority for the Continental Union. They then build various space stations and immigration ships at an unbelievably fast rate. Much of the population of Earth depends on their development for survival. Shocking information leaks out, resulting in a war between the Continental Union and pro-Evolvers countries. It became clear that a search for a habitable planet that can sustain life will take time. This pushed them to result in bioengineering as the only solution. The war against Evolvers intensifies as more shocking information comes out. During this time, humans were given heavy genetic modification using symbionts, which are squid-like artificial life forms. These life forms can adapt to the near-vacuum environments of space, all as part of illegal experiments. At this point, the purpose of the war was clear. The Continental Union wanted humans to colonize other planets and continue to live on as humanity. The Evolvers, on the other hand, abandoned human civilization. The Continental Union builds a giant warp drive just above the Earth's surface. As they complete it, it simultaneously self-destructs, stranding both Evolvers and non-combatants on Earth. In shock, Hideauze shouts in despair, especially as Chamber slays a small, child-sized Hideauze without his permission. With all the Hideauze in the area killed, Pinion's team starts salvaging ancient technology only available in the area. Rather than share it, Pinion plans to keep it amongst themselves. They then warn other fleets to stay out of their territory, with the message reaching a newly reformed Gargantua. With their new technology, Pinion's fleet defeats a hostile pirate crew. They then integrate these new pirates into their fold. Hideauze, still in shock upon learning the truth about the Hideauze, hears from Chamber that light bugs are also a creation by the Hideauze. Hideauze then starts to question his purpose, if there is still a need to keep fighting the Hideauze. Chamber then concludes that the Galactic Alliance and the Hideauze are too different to coexist. One side evolved and perfected their civilization, while the other left it entirely. Chamber informs Hideauze about transmission from a Galactic Alliance vessel. As the fleet approaches them, Hideauze sees Commander Hideauze's machine caliber, finding out that he is alive. Hideauze contacts Hideauze and instructs him to return to his side. Upon reuniting, Hideauze learns that Hideauze contracted a disease, preventing him to leave his cockpit. Hideauze tells him about his findings about the Hideauze, only to retort that he already knew about this information. Hideauze notes that they have to continue fighting them, this time organizing a powerful fleet with a militaristic society. They are looking to rally all of humanity on Earth under them. Hideauze's fleet forces Pinion's team to develop weapons for his fleet and integrate them into their group. Sometime later, Hideauze discusses with Hideauze the next step of his plan. They start a large-scale operation that somehow involves the Gargantua fleet. Hideauze asks Commander Hideauze to consider canceling the attack on the Gargantua fleet. Hideauze refuses, informing Hideauze that if he feels an affinity with them, it is his job to enlighten them to their side. Hideauze leaves to consider Hideauze's side. Pinion starts the restoration of weapons, only for Luggage to approach him, noting that she wants to be a pirate again. During the reign, Hideauze sees Hideauze's worshippers dispose of people much like how the Galactic Alliance did. His visions of Amy, Bevel, and others push him to confront Hideauze. Hideauze confronts Hideauze before the attack, with a battle erupting between either. Luggage, with help from Pinion and Flange, stages an uprising. Hideauze tasks Melty to send an advance warning to Gargantua, telling them to change course. Dr. Olden tells Ridget that it is time to use Fairlock's heirloom key that he passed to her. Meanwhile, Hideauze and Hideauze fight, but Stryker comes out superior due to his better armaments. Pinion fires another shot from a cannon, which gives Hideauze enough time to grapple Stryker. During this period, he grabs onto Stryker and opens his cockpit, only to find Hideauze dead the entire time. Stryker reactivates and flies off during this time. As Hideauze and Chamber pursue Stryker, the latter reveals that their resistance is meaningless. Stryker claims that he is operating under Hideauze's dying orders, concluding that, to ensure stability to the fleet, it was necessary to transcend himself to a god. Hideauze and Chamber reject Stryker's offer, but they are unable to destroy it due to their current condition. During this time, Hideauze decides to merge his nerve system with Chamber's interface. This supposedly increases Chamber's capabilities in exchange for his life. Regardless, Amy shows up, telling him that he does not need to fight on his lonesome. Meanwhile, at the Gargantia, Ridget uses the key to unleash a mass driver stored inside the main ship. They use this mass drive to bombard the enemy fleet. During this time, Pinion evacuates his crew and intends to take the enemies assaulting his ship. At the last moment, Luckage saves his life. Stryker decides to attack the Gargantia, with Hideauze and Chamber in pursuit. In the last moments, Hideauze reveals that he wants to live and return to Gargantia, even if he wants to sacrifice himself. Learning this, Chamber ejects Hideauze from himself, all before destroying Stryker in a suicide attempt. After the battle, Luckage and the survivors of Hideauze's fleet join the Gargantia. Hideauze learned how to become an experienced salvager that can find rare tech in whale squid territory without provocation. Hideauze is looking to find ways to communicate with them in the future. During this time, he goes on a relationship with Amy. We end with an image of Chamber at the bottom of the sea, having whale squid larvae attached to him.